Hey there, Alannah. So Eric and I are giving feedback via screencast this time for essay number 3. That way we can really take a close look at students' essays and give some specific feedback on what's already working well and where we might offer some suggestions. And so nice job getting a draft done and turned in. I think you're showing some really great comprehension of the ideas from chapter 3 already in this draft. And I will kind of point out along the way where things are really coming together nicely, and then I'll give you some suggestions to think about as well. So starting with this first paragraph, I think what's really nice is you dive in quickly to offering Jake a clear thesis. So you're going to have to go to nursing school. So that's your position, that's your claim, that's the thing that you're going to support throughout the rest of your essay. Here, you kind of forecast a little bit that you're going to be building your argument on the ideas from Eric's book, which is fine. I think if you wanted to map this out a little bit further right here, you could, at the end of this sentence, say, well, let's see, ideas I got from Eric Selhub's engaging ethics of different philosophers and their version of what the good life is. For example, I will be calling on ideas from Socrates, Mill, and then if there's another source that you want to pull in, you could include those specifics there, but you certainly don't have to. So I think the intro is working fine to set things up, and then you dive into Socrates here, which you're off to a great start. You are immediately informing Jake about the charioteer metaphor, and you're letting him know what the different components of the metaphor are, that we have reason driving, and then we also have these two horses. We have desire and willpower, and how do these two balance each other out? And so this is a nice sentence here. Our ability to control things while still maintaining our well-being is how Socrates is said to believe we can achieve the good life. So that's great. My suggestion throughout here is really going to be about slowing things down and teasing it out a little bit more for Jake so he gets a full picture. So let's see where you go with this. You have to use your willpower to control the desires and lusts that come from your current job at the resort, and sacrifices then so that you can go to nursing school and potentially save tons of people in your community. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that you split out these ideas. Okay, so you have idea number 1 right here, which is that you have to use willpower. And then you have number 2 idea here, which is you're going to have to make some sacrifices, okay? So I know these are related things, but let's just look at how we could tease them out for a minute. So if you're going to talk about willpower and applying that to Jake's situation, I think you can pull in some more details about what those lusts and appetites look like right now so that Jake can really visualize it. So something like, Jake, of course you're enjoying this time while you're feeding your appetite at the resort with things like great food and parties and plenty of sun. But what will happen to your life if your appetites rule your choices without the help of reason and willpower? You want to give Jake the opportunity to imagine that he is that charioteer and that his life is being pulled in a direction completely by that black horse, the one that is the appetite lusts horse. What happens? He's going to get off balance. He's going to probably get to a place where he feels out of whack, or Socrates would say his psyche is feeling unbalanced. And you might even acknowledge that this desire that he has to go to nursing school right now could be his reason or his charioteer or his psyche that is already feeling out of balance, telling him, Jake, you need to get back on course. You're letting your appetites and your desires and your lusts kind of control the direction of your life right now. And so it's that part of his psyche that's pulling him back with these thoughts of going to nursing school. So if you can slow that down and kind of apply that a little bit more, I think that will work really well. And then you bring up this idea of willpower. So let's see. I'm sorry, we already talked about willpower. Then you're going to have to talk about sacrifices. So here's how you can develop the sacrifices part. Your willpower will tell you that you also have to make sacrifices, but it's worth it because you will have the potential to save lives and maximize your own abilities, okay? So you want to let him know that even though there's sacrifice involved, as you said here, it could save tons of people in your community, which is true, but the big thing for Socrates and for Mill is not so much about helping others as it is about actualizing your own potential, being the best you can be, achieving your full worth, whatever you want to think of it as. And so I think if you can fold that idea in there a little bit as well, that'll be great. Now this section right here about benefiting the most people or being selfish if he doesn't go to nursing school, I'm really not sure about that section. You may want to ask Eric if that's true. I just don't know. I've read the chapter a few times. I'm not sure that's really true. I think what you're referring to there is utilitarianism. And Mill was a utilitarian, but we don't want to pull those utilitarian ideas into this essay. It's just going to confuse things for Jake. And I don't think we want to make Jake feel like, even if it's not the best decision for you, Jake, you need to go to nursing school because anything else would be selfish. I think that would be a different argument for another day, but based on the way that we're utilizing the material in chapter 3, I would probably suggest just pulling out this part that's highlighted in blue here. That would be my recommendation. Okay, so then right here when you go into another example from Salahub, I am going to suggest that you start a new paragraph here. So when you say another example from Salahub's textbook that I would like to introduce, because that's really a separate piece to your letter. So that's going to help your reader too, because this is becoming a really long paragraph. So if you start another one right here, that'll work well. Okay, so that's Mill and his idea of high and low quality pleasures. Mill describes low quality pleasures as immediate gratification, a task that can make you happy in the time being, but in the long run doesn't help you or even can make things worse. I don't know if the pleasure could be called a task. You might want to call it immediate gratification, a pleasure that can make you happy in the time being, but in the long run does not help you out and could even make things worse. I really like that you made that point because they can make things worse. Like ice cream is a low quality pleasure, but my gosh, if you eat way too much of it, you're going to create other problems for yourself. And so I think that that's well described. And then you talk about a high quality pleasure as one that may take longer to achieve pleasure and can even, I think you want cause here, can even cause suffering in the process, but it is one that can have the overall best result. Exactly. Okay. So this is where you start to dig in and apply it to Jake, which is great. You say your job at the resort is serving you right now as a low quality pleasure. It may make you happy right now at the time being, paying your bills and leaving you good money to spend, I assume. And you meet great people every day and you're comfortable. And then it looks like you're trying to use a quote to back that up, which I think is a great idea. But if you look at this quote and read it out loud, it's so disjointed that it's really hard to follow. Low quality pleasures often towards not a lot of depth to pain and frustration. So as a sentence that just doesn't make any sense, and I'm afraid at this point Jake is going to get really tripped up on this quote. So think about what parts of this quote you need to add back in order for it to make sense and in order for it to support the point that you made right before it. I think it's a great idea to have the quote. You just might want to look back and decide, what am I really trying to say with this quote? What do I need to include? And then you segue nicely into what Salahub says here has a lot to do with some of the pain and frustration you may be trying to avoid upon going to nursing school. You want to avoid the possibility of a challenge and probably the irritation of not liking your job. These are really excellent points because that is exactly the kind of struggle that we face when we're dealing with a high quality pleasure. According to Salahub's engaging ethics, Mill argues that if we aim to choose only low quality pleasures, we are missing our chances of living the good life. So you should seek to strive for high quality pleasures like going to nursing school. While nursing could cause more suffering in the process, it will have the best outcome and it could benefit the most people. Okay. This is true, but I'm going to cross it out because I want you to focus on the concept from chapter 3 that really drives at this. And this is where you're going to be able to develop your idea of high quality pleasures. So the question that this piece here leaves me with, and I'll try to write with this awkward mouse, is why. So Jake is going to get to the end of this paragraph and he's going to say, all right, Alannah, you're telling me that nursing school is going to cause me suffering, but it's going to lead me to the best outcome. How do you know that? Do you have a crystal ball? Why do you know that? Okay. you can use the sources from chapter 3 to answer the question why. So the sources in chapter 3, there's a lot of evidence built in there that shows that when we pick the higher quality pleasure, we are more likely to flourish. So one great example of this is Rat Park, right? The rats decided, we don't need the drug. We don't need the low quality pleasures, because when we have all of these great options, that's what makes us happy. We're going to make that choice instead. But I think another example that I think could really fit your paper quite nicely was the article that comes up in chapter 3 that Eric references called Why Giving Makes You Happy, right? I don't remember the author's name. I want to say it was David Brooks or Arthur Brooks. I can't remember. You'll want to look back at the chapter. But this was a really interesting article because it shows that there is evidence that proves that when we are living lifestyles or engage in behavior that is giving, that we are objectively happier when we're doing this. So think of his 2 career options. He has working at a resort, which is mostly kind of him satisfying his low quality pleasures, or working in a field that is going to be challenging, but that is going to allow him to engage in the very meaningful act of giving all the time. He'll be giving assistance. He'll be giving comfort. He may be giving life to people who are on the brink of dying. That act of giving, according to this article, Why Giving Makes You Happy, is going to continue to feed him in return. It's going to make him feel actually happier. And since you only have the 2 sources right now, Socrates and Mill, you need at least one more. So I would suggest digging back into chapter 3 and seeing what you could pull in there to show Jake why it is that opting for the high quality pleasure in this situation will probably bring him more happiness. Why it would bring him more happiness and why it's worth the struggle. Because you see, to really convince someone to move through the struggle, you have to convince them that what is at the end is worth it, okay? And so Jake needs to see what's at the end. And so that's what you're going to be having to support in this. What is he going to get at the end? Another way to support this could be the marshmallow experiment, the Michel experiment. Those kids who waited for 2 marshmallows, they had to sit on their hands. They were struggling. They were suffering. But at the end of the day, they got 2 marshmallows instead of 1. And more importantly, those kids grew up to be more successful and more happy people. Whereas the kids who couldn't wait, the kids who couldn't demonstrate that they had the willpower to go through that struggle, ended up becoming more likely to be using drugs or to get in trouble or to die at an early age. And so any of those sources I think that I've mentioned could be used to be pulled in to support your argument a little bit further. So you're off to an awesome start. I hope these suggestions help, and please, as you're revising, feel free to reach out with any questions, and I'll look forward to seeing your final.